So in this video, let's discuss the cervical plexus and the cutaneous nerves that arise from the cervical plexus. So the cutaneous nerves of the cervical plexus, I've got a mnemonic called LOGATS, and this mnemonic is perfect to remember in this order as well because of something that I will show on later on. So the cervical plexus is formed from the roots of the spinal trunks of C1, C2, C3, and C4. Now, so if we start with, here's a look at the diagram, and here is a sternocleidomastoid muscle, the muscle that divides the neck into the anterior and the posterior compartments. This is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Here in green, I have indeed highlighted the important cutaneous nerves that we need to discuss right now. And let's have a look at the cervical plexus. So from C2 and C3 arise two of our cutaneous nerves, but first let's just discuss the transverse cervical nerve. This arises from C2 and C3. So if you look at C2 and C3 and where these transverse cervical nerves arise from, here are the transverse cervical nerves. They arise from the lateral side of the neck, and they come from obviously C2 and C3 spinal roots, and they cross the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and then they will insert on, or they will be innervate the manubrium and the center of the neck, as you can see in green here. Okay, so that's the transverse cervical nerve. Now, then let's go down to C2 and C3. We know that C2 and C3 gives rise to transverse cervical nerve as well as great auricular. Let's go down to C3 and C4. C3 and C4 give rise to our supraclavicular nerve. By the way, the way to remember this is LOGATS. So LOGATS comes first. So out of this, GAT, GAT come from C2 and C3. So that's greater auricular nerve and transverse cervical nerve. Both GAT all come from C2 and C3. And because you've got low at the front, so that's going to come from above it, C1 and C2. And because you've got S for supraclavicular at the end, that's going to come from the bottom, C3 and C4. Now, the supraclavicular nerves itself. The supraclavicular nerves arise again from somewhere. These arise from C3 and C4, as we said. These descend on the lateral aspect of the sternocleidomastoid muscle and then come and innervate the superior border of the clavicle. And when these innervate the superior border of the clavicle, that's where they cross over from. And then they also have there's a medial supraclavicular, an intermediate, and a lateral. Now the medial will naturally go to the manubrium and the sternum because that's in the middle of the chest. Then the intermediate will go on the first intercostal space to the second rib, and the lateral will finally innervate simply the deltoid and the upper limb. Now what's left? You've also got greater auricular. Now let's go back to C2 and C3. We know C2 and C3 give us GAT, greater auricular, and transverse cervical. We've already discussed transverse cervical. Let's go to greater auricular. Greater auricular has an anterior division and a posterior division. Let's have a look. Here's greater auricular. It arises from C2 and C3, and it goes up on the lateral aspect towards the ear. Auricle means ear, doesn't it? So here, draw a little ear, and it goes to the ear. The ear itself, this is the pinna. The pinna is the outer portion of the ear, which is outside of the skull. And here, this is the pinna. So it has a upper 1/3, a middle 1/3, and a lower 1/3. The anterior division will innervate the lateral aspect of the lower 1/3, whereas the posterior division will innervate PM, so the medial aspect. Now finally, you've got the lesser occipital nerve, which I can't see on this diagram here. However, this is the lesser occipital nerve. It will supply the scalp, but along the way it also supplies the upper and middle 1/3, but only the medial aspects.